All right.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Maddie. I want to thank members of the press for joining us today. I'm going to announce today the details of our public health order that work in concert with the fact that we declared a gun violence public health emergency as an epidemic yesterday. Now, the meat of it, which is why you're here, is what's in that order. But first, I want to make some introductions and tell you why these fine gentlemen are sitting with me. Prior to this meeting, or this press announcement, I asked all of the major leaders in law enforcement, particularly in Bernalillo County, and I want to thank, he's not here, he wasn't able to stay, but DA Sam Bregman for his words of wisdom and advice about how we keep working together to really make sure that we're lining up all of our resources. And we've been doing that. I have to say that in the last year in particular, and the evidence in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County speaks for itself, that we're seeing a reduction in homicides. But this work tends to come and go. And that can't be the way that we do it anymore. And the way that that's occurred in that way, because we all are resource limited. So we've determined today, and I want to thank you, and I'll introduce everyone around the table, that we don't need any more resource limitations conversations. We need to use the power of a public health and a state of emergency to access different levers, different resources, and different opportunities to keep New Mexicans safe. So that's what's changed today, and we're going to keep doing this work very closely until we see dramatic additional productive changes in the state. So I don't think anyone around the table needs any introduction, but I'm going to go to my left first. With me today is Chief Harold Medina from the Albuquerque Police Department. Chief, thank you. We have the Bernalillo County Sheriff, John Allen. We also have Commander Hernandez from the Albuquerque Police Department. To my right, we have the Deputy Secretary, Baker, from the Department of Public Safety. We also have the Chief of State Police, Chief Weisler, and maybe new to the conversation in this space, but not new to the effort, is former State Police Chief Pete Caceres, who joins us today in a new official capacity, and he is our newly announced Crime Reduction Director, helping us keep the navigation and the coordination of all the different levers, resources, and opportunities to make New Mexicans safer as possible. What I have in the public health order is not agreed to by every member sitting at this table, nor was it developed with all of their expertise at the front end. What you'll see is I'm taking on all the major issues, and as I give you the details of the public health order, which I'm going to do in a minute, you'll see that some of them are going to pose incredible challenges for me as a governor and as a state, and I welcome the debate and the fight about making New Mexicans safer. Before I give you the details of the public health order, I am going to ask the Deputy Secretary just to put into context, not that you need it, about just how dire we think the situations are around the state, and in particular the largest city, the nexus of I-25 and I-40, present very particular challenges for all of us in keeping New Mexicans safe. Deputy Secretary.
Madam Governor, thank you. Members of the press and the public, welcome the opportunity to speak on a subject matter that's close to my heart. Last month, while attending my oldest son's first Yaffle football practice at a public park in the city of Albuquerque, where I began my law enforcement career and have served for many years, and I'm proud of and love. In front of the view of 90 school children, directly adjacent to a public middle school, 4 juveniles approached one another and began an active gun battle 5 feet away from my son and his teammates. All of the ancillary personnel, the moms, the dads, the little brothers and sisters, the kids playing on the playground, were impacted by the gunfire that was happening around them and the subsequent stabbing and destruction of evidence. Myself and some of the other parents responded in a way to try and get the children to safety, and thank God, none of the children not involved in the intentional fighting action were harmed. That is just, thank God. Who was harmed was the 13-year-old who brought the gun to this park, and the 14-year-old who was also stabbed. I treated those gunshot and stab wounds at the scene while we waited for first responders to arrive, additionally securing the pieces of evidentiary value that would be useful to the prosecution, which is being undertaken by the Bernalillo County Sheriff. In nearly 27 years of law enforcement experience, I've responded to thousands of active, violent criminal events. I have never responded to one before with my son present, and I don't recommend that course of action for anyone else. It has had a marked effect on my perception of something that I'm very familiar with, and the impact is significant. I have seen a deterioration and escalation in violence perpetrated with guns, particularly among our young people, in a manner that I have never seen before. I share that story with you to raise awareness. Media, many members in this room covered that story when it happened because it was significant when it happened. Well, I saw it with my own eyes in color, live. And this problem is real, and I'm grateful to be part of the solution, and I'm grateful for our governor's work in bringing together the agencies and the resources to aid our community at this difficult time. Thank you for allowing me to share that, Governor.
Thank you, Deputy Chief, and as many people here know, it's not an isolated incident. And there isn't one of us sitting right here who doesn't respond in our official capacity, who isn't a current business owner in Albuquerque, or isn't a mother or a grandmother or a father or a grandfather who doesn't have a personal specific story that includes violence in our community. And before I give you the details one more time, I do want to tell the parents and family members of the children who we've lost to gun violence just incredibly recently and in recent months. I want them to have our shared condolences, and we want them to know that we are horrified by what is occurring around the state and the country, and we're going to do everything. And the group here and my efforts, I hope, are an indication. And so to the Villegases for losing Froyland, 11 killed in a road rage incident. Galilea Santiago, 5 killed on August 14th in her bed while she was sleeping. And Amber Archuleta, 13, shot and killed in Cuesta. And as you all know, there are many more. And it is time to declare an end to this kind of violence. It is, in fact, an epidemic. Gunshot deaths, or gun deaths, are the leading cause of death for children 1 to 19 in New Mexico. From 2017 to 2021, 143 children were killed by guns. 49% of those were homicides, 53% were suicides. That's nearly 3 children we lose every month in the state of New Mexico. In 2022, 12% of gun offenders in Albuquerque were under the age of 18. New Mexico ranks 3rd highest in the nation for firearm injury rates, 90% higher than the national average. I'm going to repeat that because it shocks me every time I read it or have it in front of me. It's 90% higher than the national average. In 2022, there were 1,306 firearm emergency department visits. 1,306, up from 1,263 in 2021 and 1,129 in 2020. I asked the chief before the start of this just about gunshots, and we're talking in a year's time 35,000 or more, and most people, I don't think it's all that anecdotally, but are going to tell you that there are shots fired somewhere in Albuquerque multiple times a day. And that frankly is escalating around the state, including right here in Santa Fe. So in this public health order, which is effective today, September 8th, which lasts 30 days, and then we'll, like all the other public health orders, we will either amend or renew or adjust, depending upon where we are. So effective immediately, no person other than a law enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm, either openly or concealed, within cities or counties, averaging 1,000 or more violent crimes per 100,000, and more than 90 firearm-related emergency department visits. So to put that in sort of a layman's terms, for 30 days in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, it's the only place that meets both those standards. Statewide order, but only one place meets both criteria, where we have far too many ER gunshot visits and we have far too many crimes involving firearms. We are suspending open and concealed carry. The purpose is to try to create a cooling off period while we figure out how we can better address public safety and gun violence. Now, I am sure as I go through the rest of this, there are going to be a lot of questions about whether or not we think we have the legal rights to do that. I am sure that before you write this, there will be a legal challenge, and I can't tell you that we win it, given all of the different challenges to gun violence laws and restrictions on individual firearm access and control. I think it's time we have a really strong debate about all the other constitutional rights. No one right now in New Mexico, and particularly in Albuquerque, is safe in a movie theater, at a park, at a school, at a grocery store, at an Isotopes game, at the university, at the grocery store, I think I said, getting your prescriptions, at work. You just aren't safe. I can't guarantee it, and neither can the men and the women who put on a uniform every day. In that regard, I think it's time to talk about the absoluteness of the discussion and the current court actions that suggest that the Second Amendment is an absolute right and none of the others are. And I'm sure you're going to ask me what I think my chances are. And again, if it opens up the door to the kinds of public safety that keep kids safe, I'm willing to take it on. In addition to that 30-day suspension, and I want to make sure I clarify that that suspension does not apply to any private property. Responsible gun owners are certainly not our problem, have never been our problem, and I appreciate the impact that this has. But on private property, this has no bearing. But you, on the premises, and it has no application on the premises of a licensed firearm dealer or gunsmith for the purposes of lawful transfer or repair of a firearm. While engaged in the legal use of a firearm at a properly licensed firing range or sport shooting competition venue. While you're traveling to and from a location dealing with your firearms, they have to be in a locked box or they have to have a trigger lock. So that's how we support responsible firearm owners in their daily activities. And the New Mexico Regulation and Licensing Department will conduct monthly inspections of licensed firearm dealers in the state to ensure compliance with all sales and storage laws. We will also make available any of these storage and lock boxes or trigger locks at no charge to individuals who ask us for access to such devices. In addition, which I don't think will withstand, I believe, any challenge to the public health order, we're going to compile data much more regularly and routinely about gunshot victims in our emergency rooms so that we know exactly what's occurring in every single emergency room and every single hospital statewide, and we will make sure that we know everything we need to know about the firearm, whether it's lawful, unlawful, what the caliber is, so that we can use that data to do more for bad actors. And any other pertinent information will be made immediately available to law enforcement officials. No person other than a law enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm on state property, public schools, or public parks. The New Mexico Department of Health and the New Mexico Environmental Department shall develop a program to conduct wastewater testing for illicit substances, particularly fentanyl, at all public schools, and we're likely to make that available to any other public entity and private entities that invite us in for such testing. The Children, Youth, and Families Department shall immediately suspend the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative and evaluate their current juvenile probation protocols. And what this means is that while we're really working hard, and we should, to redirect a young person's life out of crime and into a responsible environment. We want our kiddos to graduate from school, we want them to be safe, we want them to be good community members. But when one of these officers is involved in a gun violence situation, and we have a 12 or a 13 or a 14-year-old with a firearm, the notion that there's no accountability here must end until we can figure out exactly what has gone wrong and what we can do better about it. So that is suspended during the term of this particular public health order and likely to extend, if necessary, into another one. The Department of Public Safety shall immediately dispatch additional officers and resources to Bernalillo County and work with the Albuquerque Police Department and Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office to determine the best use of that resources. Unlike the surge, which worked, it wasn't sustained. And the initial surge didn't have all of the operational impacts that it needed, lessons learned, to make sure that we were there in court and the prosecutions were maintained in a productive manner. Those things all addressed, and I should alert our new director that that was a problem in the past, and it's something that we're going to have to make sure that our resources are aligned, including prosecutorial resources, so that we don't let bad actors off the hook because we don't have the right people in the right place with the right information to pursue a prosecution. I think I'm almost done, so we can stand for questions. The Department of Public Safety shall coordinate with local law enforcement agencies and district attorneys' offices to assist in the apprehension of individuals with outstanding arrest warrants. We've added another $10 million to that work. They're doing it. But I think we can leverage more productively across all these jurisdictions. And we have called on the U.S. Marshal's Office to do more. They are doing a ton. We want more. And we're asking AFT, DEA, FBI to all do their part. And I have sent yet another communication to the federal government. And I had a call with the director of the U.S. Marshal Service today that they must create a continued presence in New Mexico, given our gun violence and violent crime situations statewide. We will make sure that the order is broadly disseminated in Spanish and English and any other context to make sure that the public knows exactly where we're headed. Last thing, we also have a declaration for public health emergency for our substance abuse problem, which is part and parcel. So it's making sure that we can draw down resources and apply those resources in every context possible so we can get our arms around this continuing threat to our own public safety, freedoms, way of life in this state. I appreciate that you're all going to help me with the leveraging of resources. I want to state one more time, they did not involve themselves in the drafting of this public health order and are likely not to agree with the totality of the first initial steps, but agree completely that smart leveraging of resources and the declaration of an emergency creates opportunities to work together in a more sustained and meaningful way. And if I didn't say that right, you're free to correct me, of course. Did I say it right? Close enough?
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to make sure I don't misrepresent their work or their presence here. All right, I am available for questions.
Kevin?
Okay, I would give you a response from what Representative Lane had to say, in particular, and we're already getting recommended from this bill, is that despite billions of revenue, the state has not funded meaningful criminal justice reform, including reckless pretrial release policies and behavioral health rehabilitation. What's your response to his criticism?
I think his criticism is fair in the context of whether or not we're getting enough of our policymakers to really understand the situation that I think we are currently in, which is incredibly dangerous. I have supported the minority leader, and I got a letter from all of the Republican members of both the state and the House and the Senate about pretrial detention. Well, I didn't need that letter, but I'm grateful for it. When I introduced it over the past several years, and will continue to introduce it, I think following the federal system and having a rebuttable presumption that if it's a repeat and violent offender, that those folks should have no ability to be released pending that rebuttable, right, debate about why they are not too dangerous to be held until the trial. I'll ask for that again, and I have asked for any number of criminal penalty enhancements. Some of them have gotten through. I've asked for any number of gun violence reforms. We've gotten many through the state legislature. I think it would be unfair not to thank them for their courage. And one last thing about that, I'm going to need all the local different jurisdictions to take seriously that they have tools at their disposal, including extreme risk protection orders, that not every jurisdiction, I think, takes very seriously. It's the law, and when someone requests that that be undertaken or evaluated, I would beseech every jurisdiction to do that. If you didn't see the CNN article that basically said, I will paraphrase, New Mexico's done good work, effective leadership, and all the evidence-based, right, reduction in gun violence policies, but they aren't actually utilized. Well, we should be utilizing all of those, and I'm always open to evidence-based strategies that I think will reduce gun violence, including, which they didn't ask for, but I will put on the call, I will ask for another ban on assault weapons, and I should note that not everyone sitting at this table will support that idea either. But it's something that I believe needs to be done around the country, and I hope it gets done in New Mexico. I don't know, Kevin, what my odds are today. We'll have to wait and see, but they're going to be on my call.
How will this gun ban in Albuquerque be enforced, and what will be the penalties? How will that work?
So those are very complicated questions, and we are working with our Department of Public Safety and our own attorneys and the DAs. In this context, I've directed a civil order, so I've basically suspended your ability to do that. In this context, we're likely dealing with misdemeanors, and so 4 misdemeanors, if you did it 4 times, is a felony. They're hard to enforce. And what I would like to be able to say to the general public, that it's easy to enforce, they're all an automatic felony that go with automatic jail time. That would take a very specific change in the law that doesn't exist. The point here is that if everyone did it and I wasn't legally challenged, you would have fewer risks on the street. And I could safely to say to every New Mexican, and particularly those folks living in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, I believe that you're safer for the next 30 days. We'll have to wait and see, but that would be basically it. Here's the example. And I don't think that APD could arrest anyone under the current situation because they can't enforce civil orders. So if you're out under this order, if it stands, you notice I said if, and I think I've warned everyone that we expect a challenge. Probably while you're writing this, we're getting a challenge, and that's the way it should work. But I have to take a tough, direct stand where basically I'm just ignoring the fact that we lost an 11-year-old. another child. And every single text call that I get every single day, people with guns on the trails, people with guns and kids in their cars, kids with guns in the parking lots at school, kids with guns at our parks, kids with guns in downtown Albuquerque, adults with guns shooting each other in downtown Albuquerque. And I was horrified to learn that 2 weekends ago, somebody with an automatic weapon was shooting at many other individuals with handguns who appeared to be underage. I don't know, but they were just shooting at each other. I don't know how anyone didn't lose their life or get hurt in that incident. I don't know how that person had my cell phone. But this is the climate that they're responding to. They're not safe. So the state police aren't bound by those same issues and are required to enforce any of the public orders or emergency orders that I have the power to execute. So in having more police presence, assuming there's not a challenge, or there's a challenge and we win, we'd be the only place in America where that happened. So Holly, high bar, let's go. They could make that arrest on that misdemeanor. That's how it would be enforced.
And you wouldn't be sending more officers, state police, there would be the same amount of state police officers in Albuquerque, right?
We're going to send more. And they're working on those resource allocations. And the person who's going to make sure that we can do that productively is our new director, former chief of state police, Pete Casetas.
But there's no number on how many?
No, we're working on that, but I'd like to refer to it as a significant presence. The nearly 200 million that has been made available for both recruitment and retention, we hope is a significant effort. We've got more police officers. We don't have 1,000 more police officers. So when we do these efforts, it does create a strain in other jurisdictions. But if we manage better and we send a very clear and strong message that what's happening in our state, and particularly today in the largest city, is unacceptable, we believe that we create safer situations around the state. So that's our goal here. Maddie?
We'll go to Griffin.
You sent direct messages yesterday to Mayor Tim Keller and AG Merrick Garland. Have you heard anything back today from either of those?
I have not heard back from the U.S. Attorney General, but I continue to send letters. I did call the White House and speak to Tom Pettis about this issue, because I'm not going to stop until we get the resources that we need. That's my job. Mayor Keller and I have had a conversation today. He stands ready to assist in whatever way, and I think the fact that we've got the police chief who is candid about the things that we could do better in the state police effort, things that we could do better through our juvenile probation and parole, is a strong indication that it's going to take all of us working together. And I got that commitment from the mayor today. And I want to make clear, the mayor has not been in the way. The mayor is not telling us not to do anything. But we have to create a standard where all of us are feeling, I hope, clarity that this has to change, using every tool we can until we've exhausted every idea, every tool, every strategy, every legislative aspect, every bit of it, all together. It cannot stand, and I think that that's the mayor's position as well. He doesn't have the same statewide powers that I do. I can do this. And it also allows the mayor, which I suggested he do, request for emergency funds to apply them through his experts and expertise and his police jurisdictions in a meaningful way.
Austin?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the penalty for violating the civil order. Would it be unlawful carrying of a deadly weapon? You referred to a misdemeanor.
Well, I mean, the reason I did that is because it's lawful in New Mexico to have firearms. So in my suspending that, it's not like I can create a new law or a standard. So what I can do is when you violate a public health order, it's the lowest level of violation. And that is an enforcement issue. But again, if this is upheld, and if no one challenges it, I'm happy not to have a challenge to all the people that are thinking about it. The point is this: we better have a debate about what's necessary to reduce the number of particularly illegal firearms and our ability to go after bad actors. A lot of these bad actors steal legitimately purchased firearms. There are too many. We have to do more. It should horrify every American and every New Mexican that so many young people and so many individuals with no training, with reckless criminal behaviors, are openly carrying firearms in our communities. I'm horrified.
Yes, all the examples you cited are crimes. Kids shooting at other kids, shooting from cars. So what's the value of the civil order? Why not just do better law enforcement?
Both. The value of the order is that it gives me three things. One, it says it's a statewide issue and it's a message to everyone to start leveraging their resources and arresting people. Two, the jurisdictions come at this, including with the DOJ restrictions, differently, without the leveraging and the additional resources, arresting, and where do they go? We got to make sure that everyone is bumping up their services. It's a message to the Metropolitan Detention Center. It's a message to the HMOs. You better figure out treatment. We have been sort of stalled out, to your point. This order basically says, stop stalling out, and to your point, just arrest everyone. Well, I also have to have the ability, I can't arrest everyone. There are literally too many people to arrest.
Well,
This
you
would
can't
allow
arrest
us,
anyone with a
huh?
civil- If someone's got a concealed carry permit in Albuquerque walking down a public street, they're not gonna get arrested.
I can make the point that maybe they should be. And this is the point. I'm willing to do anything and everything within a shred of evidence-based effort. Because if you're not horrified that on any street corner in too many cities in New Mexico, there is someone with a gun sticking out of their waist or their belt. And I'll tell you, if you're a young person, you're not allowed to have a handgun.
Well, it's a crime already.
I got it, but we won't be able to arrest all of them. So imagine, just in a perfect world, if this was upheld, it gives all of these police officers the ability to focus on the real criminals.
Last follow-up.
Yeah,
You took an
but your
oath-
point is valid.
You took an oath to the Constitution. Isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute. There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on my freedoms. In this emergency, this 11-year-old and all these parents who have lost all these children, they deserve my attention to have the debate about whether or not in an emergency we can create a safer environment. Because what about their constitutional rights? I took an oath to uphold those too. And if we ignore this growing problem without being bold, I've said to every other New Mexican, your rights are subrogated to theirs. And they are not, in my view.
Wait a minute,
Okay.
though. You're talking about crimes. There are already laws against the crimes, so how are their rights?
I got it, but again, if I'm unsafe, who's standing up for that right? If this climate is so out of control, somebody should do something. I'm doing as much as I know to do.
Madam Governor,
Yep.
do you really think that criminals are going to hear this message and not carry a gun in Albuquerque on the streets for 30 days?
No. But here's what I do think. It's a pretty resounding message to everybody else in that community to report a crime, to tell us what's going on, to aid law enforcement, to do something different. I'll tell you what people think, and it's not true. So Chief, thank you for your work. And Chief, thank you for your work. How many of you have been told by a business or a citizen, it's all of you, by the way, that they call or they ask for help and no one will show up or do anything about a crime, particularly even a violent crime? How many times have you heard that? Once every day? 10 times every week? Well, I hear it every day. So if this encourages the public to help us create a safer environment, I'm in. So it does do that. And people want action. That's my belief. They want every possible action. And I'm doing everything I know to do. And I think showing a little courage, even when the clarity of that courage will be challenged, is worth the fight.
And Madam Governor, kind of a follow-up with that. Earlier today, APD held a press conference, and there was a question asked about keeping criminals behind bars.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be a push from you in order to keep these repeat offenders, to keep these folks behind bars and stopping that, or a push for judges to enact some sort of order or keep them from having pretrial detention?
There's nothing in the way in which they're currently required, including every due process aspect, that prevents them from holding a dangerous person behind bars or a repeat offender. So yes, I expect that to occur. And yes, we expect there to be more prosecutions. And yes, we expect there to be the appropriate accountability measures, including jail time. We expect all of that. It is time for every piece of the law enforcement, public safety environment to work better together. Does anybody, I don't have to be the only one talking.
I think it's important that we recognize that there are certain things, we agree on a lot of things. There's some things we don't agree upon. But I think that's the beauty of this, is we could still all sit here and recognize that we have to work together. And I invite any help that we could get in Albuquerque from any entity. And some of the things that we spoke about is like, how do we get the right resources out to the Metro Detention Center? We know that that is the largest mental health facility, drug treatment center in the state of New Mexico. And we know that we need to keep more people in there, but we can't keep everybody forever, especially with the level of crimes that they commit. Eventually their due process happens and they're released. And it does us no good to release them and they're going to fail all over again, because they didn't get the right resources they needed in order to become successful in life. So I think that we're looking at this as a whole, and how we fix people getting treatment, how we keep more people incarcerated with the treatment, how we work together to serve the 5,400 outstanding felony warrants in Bernalillo County. So I think there's a lot of great things that we've discussed, and like the governor said, we don't agree on everything, but that's the beauty of being able to work together, and that's the beauty of us working as one team with one goal, making the city of Albuquerque safe.
And I'll add to that. I think it was brought up, I can't remember, I think it was around July 4th, and there was an editorial that I read all kinds of things, and it said, what is the mayor doing, what is the governor doing, what is the AG doing, what is the chief, and what is the sheriff doing to address gun violence? Here you go. And like I said, the chief said before, we had arguments in here before, and we had robust arguments. The whole point is, what can we do, just not for the whole state, but specifically what we're in charge of is Bernalillo County. At the same time, we're not going to tell you every operation that we're doing, but we're not only just tired of it, we're seeing people die in the process of waiting for everything to happen, waiting for everything to be perfect, waiting for all the people power that we're supposed to get for our office or our agency. We can't do that anymore. So we're working together. So here we are. Here's a photo of it. The state police, the APD, the new director, the governor. We have a bunch of resources that we can utilize to make sure that we start making a dent. As far as the questions you had earlier, I said the other day at a press conference with DA Bregman, it's time for tough love. We cannot force people into treatment. But we are telling you, if you are committing a crime in Bernalillo County and we catch you, we're going to force you to get treatment through the criminal justice system. That means the judge has to make a decision whether they stay in jail or whether they add diversion. I'm not going to sit here as the Bernalillo County Sheriff and hope that the person that I see on San Mateo or Wyoming in the central area that has committed a crime, and I hope they go get some help, but we're not going to go ahead and deal with them because we don't want to get in trouble. Those days are over. So again, tough love is coming. We just talked to the MDC chief or the warden to make sure that they're ready. We have to do something now. We can't sit here and have debates. We can't wait for the 30-day session in January. While we do that, people are dying in the process, and we have to make things actionable.
Nick, let's just do one more and then wrap it up.
So let's say this month goes exactly as you're hoping, you win any challenges to it, you get data that looks really good for the whole thing, I mean, what's after that? What would you know, hope to follow?
I would hope that data, if this holds, and it works, then we make a decision whether we can remove the order if the public emergency and the epidemic is over. I bet it's not over in 30 days. So I would guess this group would ask us to modify, to use the data, to identify additional strategies, and to re-execute the order. But these are all things I can't answer yet. Again, the beauty for me is this is the power I have. It allows me to marshal resources on the public health side for drug addiction and drug abuse. It unlocks other emergency funding for leveraging overtime for any number of activities that we don't currently have access to. It allows me to dictate to hospitals, although they're supposed to be doing it, but make it really clear they have to report information to us about gunshot victims. I have to have it. Where did it come from? What do we know about it? Do they know it? What's happening? That collective allows us to do our work smarter and more aggressively. And that is what all of us expect. Because there isn't a single, it is, I don't want to use this word, it's bigger than heartbreaking. You know, when I'm out and about as a non-law enforcement person, I'm very accustomed to having people talk to me about their egg prices and what we're going to do about inflation in general, and largely now about potholes and about beautification. And that's another area that we're going to release some information about shortly, is cleaning up New Mexico. And those are, you know, I'm well postured to talk about and positioned about what we're going to do and to hear their ideas. I don't get any of that anymore. I just get, I'm not safe, and what are you going to do about it? I'm terrified in my own neighborhood. I talked to someone at 9:30 last night, a former elected official, who had a young person knock on their door at 9 o'clock at night and said, I always open the door. And it turned out that this was a kid waiving money for, you know, a sports thing. But for far too long, she was terrified. What happened? You shouldn't be terrified in your own neighborhood. And you are. You're terrified. So it's time for us to be bolder, bigger, better, more direct, and to try tools that may not make sense to some of you, any of you, in this context. But they will initiate a robust response. And that's exactly what we ought to be doing. Director.
How do you get a retired state police chief that's very happy being retired to come back into the building he swore he never stepped foot in? You know, and that's a compelling call from the governor saying, hey, I have a position for you where you can make a difference and get off the sidelines. That position is simply put, if I do my job, I'm out of a job in 30 days, maybe 60 days, depending on how long this order stood up. It's because I can work, and I hopefully continue to work with the gentleman sitting at this table, and I have history with them, both chiefs and the sheriff. Sometimes not always great, and sometimes great, but the reality is that I want to be, or I'm in a position where I can coordinate the efforts and the resources that the governor's office has available to them to best directly attack the issue at hand. And for me, it's very laser focused. It's violent crime in the metro. I'm speaking as a business owner and a resident. I got a grandson that's going to grow up in that environment. How can I best help address that situation? And quite frankly, it's to bring together, like I said, the resources that we have and the funding and use it most effectively, and not just a one-shot deal. How can we sustain that in the metro area and make sure it's long-lasting, working with not only entities here, but with the district attorney's office, JPO, APO, and the federal authorities. To be honestly, it's time to bring the hammer. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but we need to put this criminal element on their heels. We need to definitely disrupt these organizations that are selling guns illegally, possessing guns illegally, committing violent felony crimes. People need to feel safe opening businesses, having employees go there and living there. And I believe that the governor enacting this emergency order gives us some of those tools and helps kickstart that. A lot of great work's being done. I hope to coordinate that with the three leaders here and others in the state and really get a long-lasting, effective result in the metro. And I think this is going to hopefully do that. That's my 2 cents.
Right. And I think it's going to have a market impact as well. But if it doesn't, something else is coming. Enough is enough.
Yeah.
Enough is enough.
Okay. Governor, as I was saying last one, I missed John, so last one for me.
She did that on purpose.
I know. No, it's okay. You know, you mentioned that there's people at this table that disagree with the order. I'm just curious if anyone wants to step up and speak. What specifically do you disagree with?
Can I just do it? I think and I'm going to thank Milan for his really tough questions. They're fair. It's the concealed and open carry. Because if we could modify that with evidence that suggests that you're safer if you do. But I can't in 30 days. If I can turn down the temperature. You know, it's not illegal for a young person to have an automatic weapon, just a handgun. I can't arrest that person. If we tell the bad actors, and I realize it's a pinch and then some on responsible gun owners, I'm clear, it is. It's a sacrifice that allows everyone else to get their arms around a growing, significant problem. I don't believe anyone here thinks that, you know, that's gonna stand or that's the best or the number one idea. But I'm doing it because I think that debate and getting into the session about what does need to work is appropriate. And if not me, then who is gonna initiate the debate? And actually, you asked me, what more would you do? How far? What will it take for you to do everything in your power? I'm embarrassed to say that it took another child's death. But we're going to keep pushing. So the pressure, in like every other emergency, I didn't pull off a firefighter or stop going into the north until that fire was out. I'm not going to stop yelling at the feds or living in, temporary housing to bring light to that situation until they have their resources. I'm not going to stop pushing on public safety until it's safe. And I'm sure some things will work better than others, and I'm sure things will get adjusted. I'm sure I'll get restrictions that make it clear what I can and cannot do, and we keep fighting until every child, every family, every neighbor, every community, every city, every village is the safest it can possibly be in the state of New Mexico. And I want to end with this. I can do all the public health orders and all the emergency orders I want. And if I don't have men and women who are willing to come out of retirement, who stay in their jobs, who deal with unimaginable resource limitations, who have a growing criminal element, who are at risk every single day, who are on every target of every organized crime member's list, I am sure, we have no hope that they get up every day. And if they can get up every day and do this work, I can execute a tough, broad, sweeping challenge to the city that has the most significant issues today, and a challenge to the state that I'm going to work very hard to make sure none of the rest of you find yourself with these two issues that would require us to do even more in your own city. And as I said, there are plenty of neighboring communities that are close. It is growing as a general issue. Thank you for being here today. And New Mexico, let's stay safer.
Quick question on Governor Richardson, so next week's the funeral. What do you think about his legacy, and did he help you teach anything to become the governor? Because there's not many governor people who are actually been governor.
Quickly, look, he was larger than life, and love him, hate him, be somewhere in the middle. When you're an elected official, you're in a position of power. It's tough to make everybody happy. That's what being responsible is. You're not going to win over every issue, every person. But he was also bold and courageous, and I appreciated that working for him. I learned something from every governor. The benefit I have, in my view, maybe other people's perception of my work will be different, is I learned something from every governor I worked for, and every elected leader, and every elected position. But in particular, when people said, you'll never, ever get these economic aspects to be meaningful. Film, space, manufacturing, not true. When people told me that I couldn't have 9 sectors, that not all 9 could perform above the national average, I didn't listen to that. We did all 9, regularly it's 10, they all are. So that wasn't true. If you set your goals high, like this public safety work, the likelihood that you get as close as you can is much higher. I certainly learned that from Governor Richardson, and he took on his critics in the same fair way he took on his supporters. And he created space for the rest of us to have debates about the future of the state. And I think he's going to be really missed. And the last thing is, there isn't anyone from this state or anyone readily that comes to mind around the country that's going to be able to take his position in foreign policy and international work for hostages. And I have no doubt that that's a discomfort for many of us around the country.
Thank you so much, everyone. And members of the media, I will get you a printed copy of the public health order shortly, so you can take that with you. And then we'll send out a press release shortly.
Thank you. Thank you for asking about Governor Richardson.